Welcome, everyone. It is September 29th, and you are joining us for Chandler-Gilbert Community College's Hopes and Fears series. Some of you may have already experienced the description of the show, but I actually want to read it to you because we have a beautiful, large team that has put together this production, and the description was very carefully crafted. In this series, we explore the state of our nation, injustice and systemic racism, and its impact on the Black community. It is designed with the goal of engaging the entire community, and this evening session brings together the range of voices within the Black community, all the way from the spirit of our youth to the wisdom of our elders. Our goal is to virtually recreate the realness of the kitchen table conversations, making the space where not just students, but parents, grandparents, allies, faculty, staff, and community members can have restorative conversations that reveal our hopes and move us beyond the fear. So I just really want to ground why we're here today and also want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Enjolie Lafaurie. I am psychology faculty at Chandler-Gilbert and also the faculty development coordinator. We have some very brave souls that are coming to join us today, or here joining us today for our fourth installment of this series, where we're focusing on the experiences of multiracial or biracial families. I'm going to have each individual introduce themselves. And so, oops, sorry, I'll just move my camera. So I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves by your name, kind of physically where you're at, right, in our state of Arizona, your connections to the community college, and also your connections to one another. You're muted. Yeah, Leland and Beth, we're going to start with you. And thank you everyone for your grace, right? We're in this world where we think we get how to unmute ourselves and then we forget. Go ahead, Leland and Beth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Scott. We are located in Santan Valley, Arizona. And this is my husband, Leland Scott, and my daughter, Paige Elliott. They're in the red shirt down below. And I work at Chandler-Gilbert Community College. I'm the admin specialist for the Vice President of Student Affairs and the Dean of Enrollment Services and admin for Dean of Student Development. I also am a student here at Chandler-Gilbert as well.
My name is Leland Scott. I'm married to Elizabeth. My daughter is Paige, and I'm a graduate from Chandler-Gilbert Community College, so I'm happy to be here.
Alrighty, well, I'm Paige. I am the daughter of Leland and Elizabeth. I am in Gilbert, Arizona, and my connection is through my parents and my siblings that all go to Gilbert Community College, Gilbert Chandler Community College. So I don't go there, but I feel like I'm a part of them.
And my name is Arionna. My mother, Amy. I also went to Chandler-Gilbert. Oh, and yeah, we live in Albuquerque, Arizona. So I'm Amy. I'm Ariana's mom, and we are in Albuquerque, Phoenix, and she's just a former student at Chandler-Gilbert.
Thank you, everyone. You know, it's so helpful, right, for people to provide context and to know, right, who belongs to whom. So when Beth referenced the person, I'm sorry, my dog is walking by here. You can probably hear his little pitter patter. But anyway, when Beth referenced the person in the red shirt, it's not me. I am not their daughter, as much as I would love to be a part of their family. So Paige is their daughter. All right. So we have a set, if you're watching us for the fourth installment now, we have a set series of questions that we present to all of our panelists. And then from there, you are welcome to ask questions, whether you're joining us via Facebook or YouTube. But we'll get, the set of questions out first, and then we will move into the audience questions. So since it's called the Hopes and Fears series, right, let's maybe start with what's a little bit maybe more challenging so that we can get to the parts that hopefully feel a little bit restorative and better by the end. Paige, I'm going to ask you to start us off and ask you, in this time frame, right, what are some of your fears?
Well, I'll start with the obvious. Being biracial, from a white mother, a Black father, I would say the obvious is that my fears are for my Black family. I have Leland, that's my stepfather. So I have my stepfather, I have my father, I have a huge Black family. My daughter's father, just so many Black individuals, men, and, with everything that's happening today, women as well, that are Black. And so the fear is always for the safety of my family. The fear is when you see the stuff on TV, when you see what's going on, what does it take for that to be one of my loved ones? And so as though it's been kind of far away right now, I don't know the families. My heart goes out to all the families and, what's going on. This has been something that has been going on for such a long time. And what if it was one of my loved ones? And so my fear is always, for my family. And then if I go a little deeper, my fear is also using my voice. How do I position myself right now, right? As a biracial individual. I think being biracial brings a lot of complexity. Are you white enough? Are you Black enough? There's so much that a biracial individual can feel at a time like this. And so my fear is, not being silent in this moment, using my voice, using my platform, using anything that I can in this moment, but also realizing that I'm not experiencing, with one of my full Black family members, that Black experience. However, I want to be vocal and take a stand. And so there's a lot of different things that I can speak on that, but I can say that definitely not being quiet at this time, not being an ally at this time, and knowing how to position myself is definitely something I constantly think about.
I hear that. The question of two things. One, am I doing enough? And then also, what is my position in relationship to the issue, right? So that resonates with me as well, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. But I want to, get the panelists' voice in here. Let's just continue by family, right, for this question set. So Leland and Beth, right, what are some of your concerns and fears right now?
Well, as a Black male, actually as a father, the father of Paige, and we have 3 boys. It is a concern. I've never had any issues personally, with the police, but they happen far too frequently, as you can see on TV, and so it's a concern with my boys, in their 20s and venturing out. My son just drove to California, at 20 years old, and I have another 21-year-old. Are they going to have some kind of contact or with an authority that I didn't have that we're seeing on TV? So that's a concern, and not only with my boys. Paige just recently had an incident where she was pulled over, and there was a concern there. So it's just something that's in the back of your mind, and you want to make sure as a parent, an African American parent, I'd imagine maybe any parent, but you want to make sure that you've prepared your children well for those circumstances. And we've had these conversations, making sure that your license is, registered, everything's proper and in the proper place. And when you do get pulled over, what's your demeanor? How's your communication? To make sure that, nothing pops off that's going to facilitate some of the things that we're seeing now on TV. So.
I would just elaborate that it's not just the fear of their safety, but it's also the fear alone of the generational gaps that we face, because like when I was born in '69, there was, the riots in the town that I'm from back in Pennsylvania, York, Pennsylvania, the riots were really bad, and my family grew up in those times. So my white side of my family was, very prejudiced, at times, but I got removed from that because I was brought up in an African American household. Since the time I was 10, I have been raised by a Black family. So like my viewpoint sometimes is distorted, or I don't see what's going on, and not because I'm white and I don't see, but because I grew up in this African American family. And so the things that, the culture and environment that was happening at that time, that's what I experienced. So my dad always, passed on the knowledge, or his spiritual, his faith. And he always said, you don't need to see color, we're all the same in God, in God's eyes. But hearing some of these conversations that we've had in this series, I heard someone say, well, I'm offended if you say I don't see color, so being able to ask that conversation is a fear of mine, like, why can't I say I don't see color? That's what I was taught, and I'm taught by a Black man. So I'm not trying to be offensive. I see the skin you're in. I know I see you as a person, not you as, the past or the history, but I see you. And it's hard to come across when you're white to say, I want to ask those questions. Why can't I say what I was taught or what I was, believe in, and not offend you? Because in my heart is right. I'm coming from a place of genuine. I love everyone, and I don't want to be, biased. So that is my fear is again, not only just with my family, but also with being able to ask those questions. I have to actually say, like, this is the first time in my life, and I'm 51 years old, that I kind of felt uncomfortable being white, even in my own household, having those conversations. So, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit deeper, but that's just, the surface of it. And some people would say, well, now you know how it feels. Well, I don't know. Do I know how it feels? Because, this is very uncomfortable. And I can never say that I walked in your shoes and I experienced what you did, but I can say that I'm in an uncomfortable place at times now in my own household, and questioning, those fears, and being able to ask questions within the house, or even, outside of the house with coworkers or peers.
I appreciate, of course, everyone's comments, but, especially the level of vulnerability that you all are sharing with. And, I think about essentially like our proximity to the issue, right? How directly impacted am I, right? Might make us question how much of a voice, right? How much can I say, right? And also, I think for others, it may lead to questioning of our identity, right? So Paige, I kind of heard, you didn't directly say that, but this question of, am I in the role, or in the same moment, you can be an ally and you can also be a part of, being impacted, right? With the issues that are impacting the Black community. Let me allow Arionna and Amy to respond, and then we'll kind of see where our comments go from there.
Obviously you guys said everything so perfect, but same concepts of fear. I personally, don't really worry about myself being, targeted or put in a position where someone, is making me feel uncomfortable. But I definitely fear for my family, and, we have family everywhere, Texas, Washington State, we have family everywhere. So definitely fear for them. I have a few cousins that are, close to my age, or at least in the, 20, 25 range, which I definitely worry for them. And then I guess something I would fear for myself is, other than, being targeted, but if I was to walk into getting a job or just an opportunity or something that I know I'm, fully educated on, I feel comfortable doing, but, just being not considered based off my skin or anything like that. I fear, even though I'm mixed, skin color just ultimately holding you back from certain opportunities. And then also going what Paige said, feeling guilty. Like, what would you say to our kids looking back and, staying quiet? That makes you feel guilty, when you had so many times to speak up and so many things you wanted to say and you just never said it. So what Paige said, living in silence, I don't want to bring that to the grave. So
Go ahead, Amy. I'll let you jump in before I comment on everyone.
I would just say that my fear is more obviously for my children always, and our family. I think we're in a little bit of a different spot with them being lighter, that we don't feel like they're going to be targeted as much. But what is it going to be like for their kids? I have a fear of their, my grandkids, what's it going to be like by the time it gets moving down in years if nothing gets resolved and it just keeps getting worse and worse.
I appreciate you bringing up, again, that connection of there's so much complexity given, right? Our biracial families, our multiracial families. And so we're all positioned in really different spaces. And so at the same time that we can be an ally and the same time we can be impacted, there is an inherent privilege, right? That comes because of colorism, right? That comes from potentially having lighter skin, good hair, right? All the ways that we exoticize those who are biracial or even multiracial families, right? We try to make it sound like it's something cool, but the reality of that kitchen table conversation, I think we're sharing, can be uncomfortable. And then for some of us, it's the first time that we're maybe having these conversations or thinking about the identity aspects that are evoked, right, from what we're living. So one of the things too, in putting together this panel that I want the audience to know is that we really, we tried to find people that were in really different places and stations because that is a better mark of the complexity of the issues that we're facing. Does anyone, before I kind of move us along, does anyone want to respond or does anyone relate to things that were shared from any of the panelists? You don't have to, but just want to make room for that as you hear one another. No. Okay. Well,
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there was so much that we just talked about, so I don't know which way what it's going. But when Arionna was talking and she said, I don't fear for myself as being targeted, but I fear for, my family and such. I think when my dad brought up my incident, that I got pulled over recently and such, it was the first time that it was in the back of my mind for me, where I've never questioned it before, knowing, the color of my skin. But it was the first time that I thought in that moment, so I got pulled over for running, not coming to a complete stop at a red light. And when I had pulled over, it's 11:30 at night, I'm by myself on the side of the road, I'm a female, I started questioning, and your mind gets filled with so much anxiety that I just realized, like, oh my goodness, this is the moment, that you see on TV of all this stuff. And not that I was fearing myself, but I was thinking how, if, one wrong move, one wrong decision, one wrong, if you're not being compliant in that moment, how so many of those situations go wrong. And so though I actually think because of my skin complexion, that probably, he went a little easier. That's how I feel, truly. I feel like because we had a lot of back and forth conversation, I feel like that wouldn't have been acceptable. I thought about these things, while I was being pulled over. The level of conversation, me asking questions, him responding when he told me, hands on the wheel, me grabbing my insurance, just different things. I'm like, so many of these situations can go wrong. So when she said she didn't feel like she, was a target or anything from the color of her skin, it made me think back to now.
Paige.
I am thinking of that, you know what I mean? And though I know I'm not in the same position as family members, but I still don't know that I identify that way. And the color of your skin is still important.
Question for Paige. I'm sorry, but Paige, did you were saying about he went easy on you? You think because your skin was lighter?
Yeah, I do think
meant?
that. I think because I've been in a car with an individual that's fully black, and the cop. I just felt like, think about when we went to San Diego, Dad, right? We went to San Diego like 2 months ago, and it was a boat. We were on a boat in the water, filled a mixed family. My dad, I had white family members. I had biracial, like 10 biracial kids on the boat, and the cop was very cordial with my cousin when we got pulled over for going the wrong way. Very cordial with my cousin, who was a white individual, and it was fine. But as soon as my dad asked a question, the cop got immediately smart. Immediately it was aggression, and I can let him speak to it. But I'm saying, as soon as it switched, the roles switched, you could see the cop got agitated and such. And so it just makes you. My point is, it makes you think a lot more before you might not have.
Right. And I just have one more thing to add, if you don't mind. And for Arionna, I don't think you have to be afraid. And for Paige, maybe even for all of us, I think it makes you scared seeing what we've seen, to Mr. Floyd and others. But I think in my mind, preparation and being prepared, as young people, having things right and in order and understanding that, what you're at in that circumstance and how to talk to people. I think, maybe fear is strong. It's probably going to be there when it happens, but being prepared is also a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too, after Paige said that, I guess that is true. I fortunately haven't been pulled over in a good 2-3 years, but now that you say that, if I was, I probably would think about it. But that's not something I would have, a few years ago. But yeah, you're right. That would definitely be something that would go through my head. So that is a good point, for sure.
Well, I know when Paige shared that with me, I'm like, did you turn your phone on? Did you record? Why didn't you call anybody? Why didn't you do this? And it was like, she was like, you're in the moment, Mom. You're in the moment. You don't think about doing all that, kind of stuff.
But it's sad that we have to do all that type of stuff. That's the point. It's like, it's just crazy times that we even, like, I had to have those feelings that you had to worry about me. You know what I mean? Like that type. That's the problem.
Well, and also I think through, when we're in a place of fear, we respond really quickly, right? And I think that an added layer, and maybe I'll own, an added layer that I kind of experience and live with is that I never truly know how somebody takes me. So I will share that I'm Afro-Cuban and Guatemalan, right? So there is even kind of an ethnic component, a multi-ethnic component, right, to who I am. And then the experiences of how I am treated tend to be very different from that of my daughter, who identifies as African American, but actually isn't that much darker than I am. But our treatment when we go into different spaces is actually quite different. When I walk into a store, it's pretty rare that I get followed or that I feel in any way profiled, regardless of how put together I am or not, right? However, when I'm with my daughter, who's 20 years old, when I'm with my daughter and we walk into a space, we are immediately noticed and profiled. And it's really remarkable to experience that difference, right? So on top of having such a difficult experience of feeling that profiling, it also it brings in kind of like, wow, how are people experiencing me? Not that I want that experience, right? But it immediately brings in identity, right? It immediately brings in what privileges do I have given the way that I present that she doesn't have, right? But then it also immediately puts me into the space of, so am I an ally here? Am I being responded to as being a part of the community, or am I out of it?
And I think that goes back to that social identity piece that I spoke on earlier and that you kind of chimed in and said you experienced too, with kind of trying to understand where do you fit as a biracial individual? Like what side are you supposed to represent right now? Do you have to pick a side? Can you, being biracial, I have friends and family that are biracial and they might identify more with the white side. I have friends and family that might identify with the black side, and then I have ones who just say I'm black and white and say both. And me personally, I've always identified as black. That was something, even though I actually didn't realize it until 2 or 3 years ago that I actually was trying to figure out my identity, social identity. But I've always said black just because I've always been around a lot of black family. But I think it wasn't until all this stuff happening, right, in the world and me feeling uncomfortable. Like, why do I feel uncomfortable when I always say that I'm black? And it's because it's for the first time. It's like, the question came up, are you black enough? Is this the time where I stand out, and speak? And I say that because, my friend, people joke about it, right? When you go into when you're black friends, you're the white girl. When you go with your white friends, you're the black girl. I've walked into white spaces when I feel like everyone's looking at me and you're feeling like the black individual. Then you go to, the black side and it's the same thing. And so now when everything comes to light, I remember even posting the Blackout Tuesday that they had or on social media, on Instagram. I remember feeling like, should I post this? I remember, asking myself that question. Am I posting too much? Am I saying too much? When I say it, do I say my community? Like how do you position your wording? Just because it's a touchy topic at this time. Like, where do you position yourself? So a lot comes around social identity right now for biracial individuals.
Yeah, I will add in here just, to join with you, Paige, because, what's interesting is that some of us are going to have similar experiences, like, right, Paige and Arionna. It's maybe a little bit easier for me to align with you all in aspects of identity, but then it's easier, right, to align with Amy and Leland and Beth when I think about, right, my children. But I'm 41 years old, and I don't think I have thought about my identity, my racial identity, as much as I do now, or am being asked to think about it now. Since I was about maybe in my teen years, so this revisiting of, like, again, the words you used, how I situate myself in the world. Arionna, I just want to invite you. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Is this pulling up anything for you? And if not, it's okay. We have plenty of other questions.
The one thing that kind of like made me think was when, Paige was talking about, she's always identified herself as being Black. And I guess I never really thought about that. I just tell people, I'm mixed. I am mixed. But one thing is, like, I am only a quarter Black. So I'm 75% white, 25% Black. And it is sad, but, so I guess this is going back to, job qualifications and opportunities and whatnot. And I don't know if I should be, like, embarrassed to say this, or if it, like, makes sense. But I guess, when I'm filling out paperwork or filling out applications, I do put white because, I feel like, why not? In my head, just based off, or just like everything, the white person is probably, might get the job, but has a better chance of getting the job more than me. So yeah, I do put that. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, I really shouldn't have to put that. But I mean, I do, because it's just natural. So it's just, and it's not that I would, like, legitimately identify as white, because if you ask me, I'm not going to tell you I'm white. I'm going to tell you I'm mixed. But when it comes to a situation like that, then yeah, I am going to check the white box, because I just feel like, it's your better chance. So.
Well, and it makes me, the history of passing, right? So the history of passing, of being able to kind of pass in, because of proximity to whiteness, right? I don't want to use too many terms, right? But because of the proximity to whiteness, that there's a long history of individuals kind of using that primarily for their survival, given what we're talking about, which is this historical idea of the one drop rule, right? That if there's a drop of Blackness in you, that you are Black. And also for Indigenous communities works the opposite way, right? We use quantum, a quantum blood count, right? So what percentage of Indigenous are you, right? This is steeped in our history as a country, right? To be able to identify who is whom very quickly, and to, again, be able to separate one another. So I appreciate, Arionna, your vulnerability. And we're all in different spaces, and you were very eloquently, I think you own your privilege around it, and you started with that, like, that that there are ways that you're able to advantage yourself because of lighter skin, but that there's something different that you would share if you were in person, right? And you're kind of owning your identity that way.
Yeah.
Beth, I see you want to get in. Go ahead, and then I'm going to bring in a question that's come in from the audience. Go ahead.
You mentioned about, this is the first time in a long time that you questioned your identity, and that kind of resonated with me because as I shared a little bit before, I was raised in an African-American family. And so this kind of was the first time it kind of made me question it as well. And I know some people are going to laugh at this, but what's funny is my dad, he would always say, "Oh, Beth, you're Black. Your skin may be white, but you're Black. You've been raised with us and you're this or that, But when everyone started having these conversations and started talking about white privilege, I had to look up what was white privilege. I had never heard the term before. I didn't know what it was. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of why he used me to present to the Fair Hearing Board, at his business. You know what I mean? Like, he would always say, "You got the white face, I need you to do this, or I need you to do that," or, and it would work. It would help us maneuver, his business that he was getting started. But I never, call me naive, whatever, but I never realized that, that because of my skin color, I was really using that white privilege, because I didn't even know the term until now. So what?
So he was using it.
He was using it. But I just, it just made me question, because I don't see, when I'm in my family, I don't feel different. When I'm in, my African American family, I don't feel different. I am a person, So with all this chaos and all this protests and rioting, and now I'm starting to feel things that I never felt, and it's making me really uncomfortable. And then it's making me, uncomfortable for my family. And then, when they're saying they're feeling things, and I'm like questioning that. So I'm like, well, why? Why? And I think we got in a heated debate one time, about what was it we were talking about? Oh, he was saying about the riots, and they were burning the grocery stores and the everything. And I'm like, why are they burning their grocery stores? That's where they need to get their food, and people need to eat. So I don't understand why they're hurting themselves. And he's like, you just don't get it. That's the way to, they have to get attention. And I'm like, get attention. And it just we kept going back and forth about it, and it really was like a tense moment in between us, and then that's when I had to really stop and think about where I'm at, where he's at. And I started watching some of the videos, the president was sharing with diversity and inclusion, and some of the conversations with, the Black men and all of those things. I started really paying attention to it and indulging in it so that I can get a better understanding. And not because I'm white, but because I wanted to be able to understand them. You know what I mean? I wanted to be able to understand why we were having this tension, at this time when I've been white for 51 years, and we, we've been married 23 years, and I never felt this tension because of my, color in my own household. So.
And I'll just stress the president that you're referring to, it's not 45, right? It's not Donald Trump. You're referring to our Chandler-Gilbert president, Dr. Greg Peterson, and some of the videos that have been sent out through our internal communications. I think we would, I'll be so bold to say, no, I don't know. So a lot of people would be happy. I'm not going to generalize. I think a lot of people would be happy if we were seeing more videos about the experiences of Black men that are fuller and more complex, right, in their reality. I hear you, Beth, and I thank you for sharing that. And absolutely, I think that's, to me, what you shared is, it's what it is to be in a biracial or multiracial family, that the same incident can happen, and that we can all have not only just very different opinions, but our proximity, I'm going to keep using that word, our proximity to the issue, how that issue impacts us, right, is completely different. Because one, the way we present to the world, right, our skin tone, our hair texture, all those kinds of things, right, but then also from the perspective of partners, right, because we have lived different experiences prior to witnessing kind of the murder of George Floyd, or prior to kind of seeing protests, right, and the impact, and all of that socialization, it doesn't go away. It's just being highlighted right now. So let me throw this question out to everyone. The audience asks, have you ever experienced a focus on the multiracial aspect of your families from non-Americans? So maybe when you've traveled elsewhere, or from people who maybe aren't from the United States. If you don't mind, can I start with Arionna and Amy, just because we haven't heard you for a second, and then we'll jump to family number one. So do you want me to restate the question, or you got it? It's like a test, Arionna.
I'm trying to take it in. Honestly,
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I can think of. I mean, we haven't really traveled outside the U.S., so that wouldn't have, nothing from that. But I'm like around. I mean, no, not really.
Do you feel that people identify and notice the multiracial aspects of your family, or is it something that's not even kind of brought up or mentioned to your family at all?
I feel like definitely when it's like the most it's brought up, and the most frequent time it's brought up is when people are asking about my race, and they're, what are you? And I'm mixed, and they say, well, who's white, your mom or your dad. And like, that's pretty much the most common thing I think I get as far as, you know, multiracial aspect of the family. But yeah.
Sure.
From, non-American, I really can't think of anything.
And that "what are you" question is actually a question that most, I would say, is a common question and a common experience for those who are biracial or multiracial, a question that other folks don't tend to get asked, right? I know that growing up, there's like this era, this period where like you're just asked a lot, and then at a certain point, I think people just actually get a little bit more polite, and they know that that's probably not the best way to state it, and then they go around asking us the question in a different way. Amy, anything to add about, like, again, how you feel that people perceive, you know, your family? You and I were talking before today of like, you've never had anyone kind of question your parentage to Arionna or things like that.
No, because she is light, so it's until you really get close to them, even if her hair is tied up or her brother has bigger curls like me, that it's hard to tell, and it's not ever really questioned.
All right, thank you. Yeah, let's then go to, right, kind of Scott, Elliott family, right? The question was, have you ever experienced a focus on the multiracial aspect of your families from non-Americans? Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in a little bit. I don't know that we've had. I mean, we've traveled to Mexico, and my wife and my kids have traveled to China, so maybe they have on their end. But just within America, I mean, the small town that we're from in Pennsylvania has a huge Dominican, has a huge Hispanic, or I want to say Puerto Rican and Mexican population, along with black and white. So I mean, we'd stop at one of the little stores, which happened to be Dominican, and you know, they'd see my boys who kind of have the same complexion as Arionna or Paige, and they think they were Dominican, or they think they were Puerto Rican or something like that. So we've had that, but nobody's ever really, I don't think there's ever been a real focus on that aspect, you know.
Paige, you want to jump in? We can't hear.
I was gonna say the same. I'd never been like an issue with it. But more so from work, going through like multicultural trainings and such. I was a part of a company before where U.S. There was less people from the U.S. than from other countries, and so say there was like 7 Americans, and then all the other 50 people were from different countries, and so I know there was a lot of questions trying to understand my family, trying to understand where, you know, how I identify, and questions around that, but not that I was treated differently or anything, but more of a understanding, because as an American, you can be so many things.
Well, Paige, do you remember the time you said that you were presenting and the one gentleman came at you for how you were speaking? Would you relate? Yeah.
This is at that company. Yeah, I mean, they didn't come at, so it was an Asian individual that I was presenting, and he pulled me aside and told me the way that I was speaking, you know, was not correct, and basically was saying that I was speaking in a black tense and, you know, different things like that, and basically wanted to correct me and such, and told me that I wasn't speaking correctly. But yeah, that was a situation, but that wasn't more so I don't know. It wasn't more so like of a conversation. It was the first time I experienced somebody calling me out on the way that I spoke, but not around my family.
And I think, I think it's a good illustration, right, so I'll tell you how I may have experienced that situation, and Paige, you can add your experience. I think sometimes you don't always know what part is being responded to, so are they responding, and because you're not maybe sure of how people are seeing you. So again, this complexity, right, which is just so much cognitive load, right, so much to think about and manage in the time that you are just trying to give a presentation, right? So what part do you feel that individual was responding to you, like essentially your Black identity or something like that?
My Black identity, for sure. He used different terms. I think he might have said Ebonics. That's an African American term. So, I mean, he definitely was coming at that. And that was the first time that I realized, like, as I was the individual representing the U.S., I was the Black person in the group. Whereas there was no one else that was full Black from the U.S. And so when he said that to me, I said, "Oh, you're coming out the way that I speak." I felt some kind of way, just because I'm speaking loud and I'm passionate. That doesn't mean I'm angry. He was telling me I was presenting very aggressive, and telling me different things, and that's very common from Blacks and Black women to hear when you're presenting and things like that. I'm a very passionate speaker. I speak with a lot of heart. I use my hands when I speak, and for him to tell me I'm speaking aggressive, no, you're trying to say I'm speaking too Black. That's what you're telling me, and no, that's not what that is. So I think that was something that came up in that conversation for sure. But and he knew he was wrong, and he actually got in trouble for it, which means to show me that they all knew it was wrong, for how he was trying to call me out.
So yeah, we refer to that as tone policing, right? And all of us, we all kind of correct individuals based off of what society tells us how we're supposed, like you said, how we're supposed to present, how we're supposed to talk, how we're supposed to, engage and perform, right? Perform in quotes, perform our identity. There is. I'm trying to manage, all the questions that are coming in addition to the questions that we have. So I want to kind of like fold this in and see if we can do that. And Beth, I haven't forgotten that you mentioned that you want to talk about color blindness. So I have that in my mind. So this is a multi-part question. The question is, what can we do to promote a safe space for addressing white fragility while also effectively advocating for change without burdening marginalized populations? So that's a really big question. I actually want us to put that in the context of our family. So let's start there first, right? How are you all managing potentially white fragility, white privilege, right? While also effectively advocating for your loved ones without necessarily burdening them to be your teachers. Whoever wants to start.
I guess one way, just, not to overdo it or, I guess I'm kind of like speaking for my mom. Well, not only speaking for her, but I think something that is effective is to, even if it's something as little as sharing a post or, commenting on different posts, just little things that you can do that it's like not a big deal. It wasn't really out of your way, but you're still acknowledging, that there is an issue and you are, supporting them. So I just think the little things is like a good way to be kind of in the middle where you're kind of like in your place, but you're still looking out, you're trying to back everyone up. So I think just little things like that I think they're effective. So
like seeking solidarity and kind of joining with, right? Kind of being inclusive, right? To as many folks as possible. Okay. Others, how are you managing this tense space of different realities? Oh, Paige, we can't hear you. I see you trying to communicate. I know, Zoom and all these platforms, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. No, I was going to say, I personally prefer you to ask questions, because it shows me that you're trying to understand and you're trying to get it. And so I think, like, even when my mom said earlier, like within our own household, where she might have had an opinion one way and then my dad might have said something. And then next thing you know, we're like, hold on a second, we're not on the same page here. I think just creating that safe space to know, okay, well, what do you want to know? Or for my mom, I can say for her, even though she might not have agreed with some things, or I don't want to say didn't agree, but didn't understand, right? I know she took a step back and educated herself. And then I know every Sunday we get together, we cook, my dad cooks, and we talk. And so this conversation comes up probably once a week. And she came back and had new facts, and new things that she researched and she might have had questions on. And then it let me know, like, hey, like, okay, she's invested in wanting to understand or know more for her kids. And now she's like a warrior with it. Like, what do I need to do? How can I be the best ally? And so I'm open for the questions, and if I don't have the answers, because I'm still educating myself in a lot that I didn't even know. But I think I'm trying to create a safe space within my family by allowing the questions.
I'll just add to it. I mean, I haven't the workplace isn't always the best place to have these kind of conversations, but I have another partner at work, and we've had these conversations. Now he's white, you know, and I think the best thing to do is allow people to talk and listen, you know, on either side. Listen, regardless of what you've been through, you know, is to listen and let them know that you're listening. And so that's what I did. This gentleman's from Georgia, rural Georgia area, and you know, we were talking about. I don't, you know, color. I don't see color like my wife had said before. You know, I understand that you're black or I'm white, or you're white and I'm black, but you know, I don't see that. I see you as a person. And he was stated to me, he's like, well, where I was raised, you know, it was I couldn't go to that side of the tracks. I couldn't go to that church. I couldn't go to that grocery store. That's for them. So it educated me to see color, you know. So that was a different perspective for me. So I'm like, because at first I was like, what do you mean, you know, you see color, you know, and I had to listen and really understand what he's been through, you know, and I think that's the safe space is allowing people to have their experiences and listen to it, you know, and not judge, you know, and I think that has to happen on both sides.
I'll add to that. I think, you know, listening and allowing people to have their experience, I would say without trying to equate experiences, because that's actually where we get in trouble because of the discomfort, right? We want to make it seem like, oh, just because you experience discomfort, that means I experience discomfort too, right? So we're all the same and we can wash away the thing that makes us different, right? And I think that's where the problem comes because no, our relationship to the issues are the reaction that people give us. Like for some of us is life and death. And for some of us, we get to pass, we get to walk along, we get to get the job, right? I think that's really an important part. Both Beth and Amy, I just want to, you know, because it's speaking to kind of this context of white fragility, which doesn't mean that you experience it, you know, but I'm just wondering what your response is about how your family navigates maybe your learning or your relationship to all of the issues we're facing.
I can speak it within our household. Again, everybody kind of, I don't want to say they view me as black, but they don't address it or talk about, you know what I mean? Like it really wasn't something that we talked about because it didn't seem like there was a, you know, a difference there per se that we were experiencing within our household. But in the midst of all this that's going on now, it's a different time space that we're in. And yes, I'm afraid to ask my questions. Like if I ask the question, I'm afraid that I'm going to be looked at as what I say doesn't matter, that I don't count because I'm white, or I don't understand because I'm not black, or you know, it's and I mentioned before, like many times in the series, I typed questions I wanted to ask. I really wanted to ask my question, but in fear of what someone was going to counter, I didn't. You know, I kept quiet. But now I find myself, you know, there was a protest on the corner by my house, and you know, I was out riding my bike, and I'm like, I'm going to go stand with them, you know. And I tried to at one point engage my family, you know, but my husband's like, I'm a black man, you know, what happens if somebody says something to you or offends you, you know, and I got to step in and I got to handle that. I'm the one going to jail, you know, and then that's our household, you know, I'm the provider and I can't take care of you, the kids. So no, I don't want to put myself in that position and risk all that for, you know, I want, you know, I want to have a voice, he said, but I'm not going there. I'm not going in the midst of all that tension and riot. I can, you know, I'll have to find another way, you know, to stand. So I don't know that we found that yet. We're trying, you know, but I don't know that we found it.
While you're speaking, it makes me think, because I can say within myself, when we would speak in our house about it, I would get so frustrated with my mom. Like, I would just get frustrated with her saying, I would just get mad. Like, what do you mean you don't get it? You know, what do you mean you don't understand? Like, how do you not? You know, like you said, you were raised by a black family. Like she said, You know, clearly I know my mom's white, but I'm not as close with my white side of my family. So I look at my mom and I'm like, you have to understand this doesn't make sense. And so when she's asking these questions or she's making these statements, I had to like take a step back and realize that she's not coming from a place of being rude or ignorant. She's coming from a place of really trying to understand. And so I can definitely say that there's been some tense conversations in our house, and even between all of us, even though we grew up in the same house. I know my brothers view differently. You know, I know that they have that generation, the younger generation, they're more close to it now. They're real active in it now, and they're very passionate about what's going on. And I know that their views are different. So yeah, my brother's coming in with their point of view and their friends and their influence. You have my dad, who's really passionate about it as a Black man. You have my mom, and you have me. And so it's a lot when you sit down at that table every Sunday. You know, that takes place.
Amy, I want to let you get in, to see if there's your proximity, again, your relationship to, these issues, kind of who brings up the issues in your household. And I know you and I have talked about it, that it's not as frequent of a conversation in your household. So yeah, how does these conversations get brought up?
Well, much kids, because we don't experience a lot of it, and I don't feel that they do. But I don't remember who said something, but actually with my kid's dad, a couple weeks ago when basketball came on and they all had certain things on the back of their jerseys, and we were watching the game and I was like, what is that? And then I saw the sayings on the floor and I just didn't understand. And I got into a conversation with their dad and I was like, I don't get it. Why is it being completely televised everywhere for everyone to see? And we kind of got into an argument because he's like, you don't get it. Him, himself, walking in places, into stores, restaurants, jobs, he gets both sides of it. He's darker than both the kids. And so it was in a conversation. He just said, I don't get it, which I don't. But we talked about it, and then it made me realize more of what was going on and what was being said to try and help everyone to understand it.
And I'll own what you all are sharing, what it makes me think about, and I'll be very vulnerable and say that it relates to my personal experience. And of course, you all please come in and give your personal experience and connection to the issue. What I hear is that it can be challenging when it's our family members that don't get it, because we think of our family members as being accepting, right? As being the people who we can be our most intimate selves with, right? And so it sometimes maybe can be experienced as a little bit of a rejection from the one person that you were not expecting to fully be rejected by. Although you can still hold, right, the fact that like my mom still loves me, my dad still loves me, right? Or this other person in my life, they still love me, but like, wow, this questioning of like, do you know the internal me, if you can't wrap your mind around, this one concept. And in the moment of fear or pain or discomfort, it's really challenging to kind of get over that, your own emotions, and then explain it, right, to the other person. Does that resonate with anyone?
I would say for me, actually, I just kind of experienced this being uncomfortable around a white family member who, when they spoke about it, I was silent. And I said, why should I be silent? But with, this Black Lives Matter and them not understanding, right? And them making really bold statements about, why are they doing this? And kind of like my mom said, they're terrorizing this stuff and they're doing this and those Black this, and, they're talking and they're saying stuff that they really need to be corrected, and then within myself, I'm angry and I'm mad and I'm trying to figure out, is this the right conversation? Is it worth having the conversation? What's going to happen after, if you do say something? And so I know in that moment, I kind of tried to educate them a little bit, but well, that's not what they mean, or that. But I was angry. I was really angry in that moment, and so I feel like being a biracial individual, tiptoe, like you're on eggshells sometimes when these conversations come up. I felt myself a few times siding with people when I should have spoke up. Not siding with people, but just kind of like going along with the flow, letting them speak their opinion and not taking a stand and saying something when I definitely should have, and then beating myself up about it. Like, wow, I should have said something, that they were out of place for speaking that way, or they're going to pass that opinion down to the next person, and the next person, I could have stopped it. That's not okay. Or And then a lot of times the family will speak to you because you are the Black individual, and they'll try to put all their feelings and emotions on you. And that's a hard concept as well. So I definitely have experienced it more now than ever.
And, I said when we were preparing too, especially I said to both you, Beth and Amy, I was like, I'm going to honor your role as mother. And as a mother, and I can put myself in that as well, that sometimes we don't intend to, cause more trouble for our children. Right. And so I want to honor how difficult that probably is as parents, of like, or even in your relationships of like, I want to get it, but I just, you can't describe water if you've never experienced it, right? You can't describe a substance or a phenomenon if you've never experienced it. So the intent is not to maybe cause harm, but the impact maybe sometimes to cause some harm. Beth, were you trying to get in here?
Leland.
No, I was just piggybacking on what Paige said. When you have family members, so, you have Black and white, and when somebody speaks up, and as a Black man in my house, when somebody, maybe a white family member speaks up and it's not right, a lot of times I'll take what they call maybe the high road and not say anything. But, kind of like what Paige alluded to, you end up, I think about it on my drive to work, I should have responded. Why didn't I respond? And so you're beating yourself up about that. But, so there's a lot of kind of dynamic, in this multiracial family that you have to deal with, and it comes from both sides, not just white side. A Black family member could say something, you gotta figure out, do I speak here or do I not? And then on top of that, there's some emotions that you have inside, that you have to handle and have to deal with. So it gets complicated.
Yeah. I want to bring in another question, and I'm kind of aware of time. What we knew was going to happen, right? That we were going to get to talking about all this, then run out of time. Although I think some of you were nervous about filling the time. All right, so I want to move into what's providing, or providing comfort and healing for you all in this time frame. So we're very frankly discussing some of the challenges. What's helpful?
What I think is hopeful is that we learn to educate each other in love, and from a place of love, and understanding that just because I wear this white face doesn't mean that I understand everything that's going on, or that has people have done, because of my background or my story is different, and everybody has a story. So it doesn't mean that we're all in this world, but not everybody was able to hear your story and what you experienced. And so you're just, people sometimes assume that you understand, or that and so they come at you, or they answer you angrily, very angry. And my hope and my place of comfort is that we can learn to see each other as individuals, and know that there's enough hurt and pain in the world that we can, help each other by sharing experiences, and out of love and not out of anger. I shouldn't have to feel afraid to, ask you a question, to be able to be in your space with you, to be able to relate or anything. And so that's what my hope is, that we can get to a place where we see individuals, and out of faith and love that we heal.
Thank you. Yeah. So others either, what is your hope, and which is our third question, and or what's providing you comfort and healing during this time?
So, the first thing that kind of popped in my head was, I know I'm, younger generation, and I definitely love Twitter, but there's different things like Black Twitter community. And it's like everyone just, it'll be one subject, and then you have all these like different Black pages, and everyone's supporting everything. And I love to see that. They're hilarious. Everyone's so cool. Or, you'll see, for example, someone doing nails or whatever, and then someone will just, start putting their business out there and getting them attention and just stuff like that. That makes me really hopeful. That makes, when everyone's there with you, supporting you, I think it just makes everyone feel better about it, and everyone, you know, feel more open to put their ideas out there, or, you know, if they want help with something, all it takes is, you know, hop on your Black Twitter community and you'll be good. Like, you'll get everything you need. Like, I love that, you know, it brings in the new, you know, technology and how easy it is to communicate, as well as, you know, different communities. And so that's the first thing that popped in my head.
I would definitely say for me, the comfort and healing comes from the conversation. You can't go anywhere right now without hearing about Black Lives Matter or seeing it somewhere. It's integrated in all of the sports, you know, that's going on right now with the NBA back. You know, the floors have Black Lives Matter. The commercials are Black Lives Matter. You have the companies donating to Black causes and Black communities. You have, you know, everywhere you go, it's a topic of conversation. And so that conversation, it just lets, you know, us know, even though I don't think the problem is going to solve today, it took years to get here. It makes me feel like we're going in the right direction. And so the conversation for sure, like she just spoke about the unity that's taking place, being able to see other Blacks support Black businesses and be able to spotlight a lot of individuals that way, that feels good. So just seeing a lot of that, and the youth, you know, taking a stand. Like these protests, a lot of the protests are ran by the younger generations, and then you see the unity. I love when they showed the protest, and they showed all the different races coming together and the young generations coming together, and they showed that was impactful, you know, when it was done that way, you know, and so that made me hopeful and brought me comfort.
I just wanted to add in really quick, because that was my other thing, you know, the whole Black businesses and whatnot. Just recently, because this is, you know, something I didn't really think about before all this happened. You know, the different places in Phoenix, or different, you know, all these little, even if it's someone's making crab boils out of their house, you know, it's like, we would have never known that was happening, but now, you know, this lady's been doing this for years. Everything's, you know, so bomb, and nobody knew about it until stuff like this happened. Or, you know, like one of my mom's friend was talking about, you know, buying Douce because it's a Black product, and that's not something I would have known before. Someone would have just openly said. So I just think that it's just super cool.
I would like to elaborate, just empowering each other. I think I've seen that more. So, you know, everybody motivating and uplifting each other, as you mentioned, with their businesses, and not even that, but checking in on them, you know, their health, their safety, you know, their well-being, you know, making sure that each other are okay. I see that even with our work environment, you know, that they're being more conscientious with, you know, making sure the employees are doing okay, and, you know, and being isolated during this time and stuff. So just empowering and being there for each other. You know, before, no one ever checked on me before, you know, so workload might have been a lot, you know, and but now with all of this going on, I think it's great that everybody is checking on each other and lifting each other up, not just spiritually or mentally, but also physically as well. They're grouping together and going on walks, and you know, it's men's empowerment. I see a walk going on in the neighborhood, you know, and that brings smiles to me. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, the word, or the phrase, I should say, that I keep thinking about with what's been shared so far is the importance of visual representation, right? So that now, because we are highlighting other groups of people who were always there, right? We're highlighting different businesses, we're highlighting different individuals, we're seeing ourselves, right? And I think that, and I'm saying that, yes, as a biracial individual, but I think that that's probably true for people of various groups, right? The value of when you can see yourself being reflected. So it's one of the positive things that's maybe coming out of the social shifts and or some of the injustices, the response to injustice. Anyone else need to jump in or want to jump in on the question? But we have other questions that are coming in as well, but I don't want to rush you all. No. Okay. All right. So a question came in, sorry, quite a bit ago from the audience, and I was trying to manage it. The question was, do you all ever discuss who's going to take the lead on the various conversations impacted by racial bias based on your race? So, right, does a white person respond? Does a Black person respond? Does someone else respond? And then who speaks up, right? How do you make the decision of who speaks up when you're in different places, in the school, with police officers, at the banks? Yeah, great. Thank you for posting these questions, Mike. That's really helpful. Beth, do you want to jump in? I see your face.
I'm the one that always jumps in. If I feel like something's coming at my family, I will have their back. I will be the one that, what are you talking about? You need to clarify, think about what you're saying. I'll ask them, are you sure what you're saying? Because the way that you're saying it is inappropriate. And so I think my family doesn't even have a chance to even decide. I think I'm like, but you can elaborate on that, Paige.
100%. I don't, my kids don't even have a chance to speak, nor their dad. If there's an issue or something being questioned, I'm there and I'll take care of it.
And actually, hold on. So I know that a question was actually directed to both you, Beth and Amy. And so I want to bring this in right now, but I want to honor, so I hear that as the mother role, right? The mother hen role. It doesn't matter. Forgive me if I'm putting too many words in your mouth. Race doesn't matter at that point. I see your mother role as kind of taking over. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay, so let me bring in this question, and I'll still let Paige, I know you want to get in here. The question for Amy and Beth was, do you feel a responsibility to learn about your own white biases or privilege as you advocate for your own mixed families? So despite the fact that you're willing to jump in.
Do you feel responsibility to learn about your own white biases? Yes. And actually, I did the Mosaic training, and I think that was one of the pieces in that is examining your own biases and or privilege as you advocate for your own mixed families. So yes, there was a lot that I discovered that I didn't realize, because here I feel like, I'm not biased at all. And I discovered, some of my tendencies or ways were, but maybe even not more so towards my, not towards other ethnic groups. I probably defended those ethnic groups more so than anything else, so my biases were flip-flopped there.
I feel like just as a mom in general, it's my responsibility to learn all sides of it, no matter what, for my kids, because it goes both ways for them. I just need to learn it for all.
I would say I would encourage any parent of a biracial child to educate themselves on this and be able to, to educate themselves on their white biases and privilege, because I had a conversation a few months ago from a mother who was white, who had biracial children, and who made a comment that her kids wouldn't experience it, because she didn't, and I'm like, no, your kids are Black. In society, your children are Black. And I kind of shared with her my experiences with different things and my thought patterns, and her, the kids were young. And so I was saying, they're young, but these are the things that they could feel. But because of what she experienced in her own life and her own family, she made it seem like, her kids wouldn't experience that. And I told her. And so I know she had educated herself and came back and said, wow, there's a lot for me to learn here. So I would definitely encourage any parent to biracial children to definitely research, because your kid is going to go out in the world and face the world, and there's a lot that comes with that.
And we're all perpetual students. Paige, you wanted to respond to the previous question. I could tell that you wanted to respond to some of the things your mom had said. Do you want me to restate the question, or do you remember what you wanted to add in?
I don't, honestly. Okay. My mind is jumping. There's so much that we're talking about. I'm like, oh, there's, that point and that point. So no, you don't have to revisit it.
Okay. Well, and actually, you brought in you said the word boys, and so I wanted to bring this point in that I cannot help but state the obvious, right? That we are predominantly, right, individuals who identify as women are here on the screen, here willing to have this conversation, and of course, I don't mean that in any way to slight the young men, right? All of you all have brothers, right? There are boys in the family. I was a big part of recruiting for this particular edition of our series. And I want to honor the space that I found a lot of young men being in, one of two spaces, either as being kind of maybe feeling like a little overly angry and feeling like, I don't know if I can have this conversation really well. I don't know if I believe that it's going to change anything, or the other extreme of what maybe could be described as being apathetic, right? And so I'm saying that so that you'll have context. What the place that it took me to was one of really feeling for our young men, right? And then also recognizing that this conversation, one conversation, and then two, conversation about feelings, is very much space that women tend to occupy, right? So I just, want us to remember the young men and think about ways to access them. There is another question that has come in. So sorry, y'all, reading and trying to speak. What do you say to those who truly believe these conversations about race are what is dividing our country? So let me allow anyone who wants to respond to that question to go ahead and do so. And then if you want to respond to me talking about the experience men are having, you're welcome to do so as well. Go ahead.
My response kind of ties into both what you were saying and the question. My son's one in particular really said, like, I'm angry. I don't want to speak. I'm angry at the blacks and I'm angry at the whites, and other cultures, they're both hypocritical. They, say one person's, speaking out this way and they're turn around and do it the same way, say something similar, to another culture. So he was like, this world is a mess and I really don't want any parts of it. That kind, that's pretty much of, I want to stay in my space because I'm so angry. You're not going to like what I have to say, So, yeah, I don't know how to, channel that energy or that, because I want to help him heal. I want him to find some good, and I want him to feel that his voice matters. That, and I did. I'm like, just one. You say one thing, that could change somebody else's mindset. And if you change their mindset, maybe down the road it changes somebody else's. I said it may be small, but I continue to encourage. But it is a hard place to be in right now with all the different things going on with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and just all the emotional stress and anxiety that everybody is feeling. So the young men are being challenged in a lot of directions right now during this time. Yeah.
I mean, what I would say to those people who think that conversations are dividing our country is to go back and take a look at our history. I mean, there was one point where there were no conversations, right? There was no conversations. If you were black and maybe you spoke wrong or you looked at somebody wrong, there's certain things that may or may not have happened to you. So to say that that's what divided our country, I think is not correct. Conversations are good to a point. I think personally it's time for action, and that's why you're seeing so many of these protests. After a while the conversation does get stale, but to say that it's dividing our country, I don't think that's what is in fact dividing our country. All right, it's how we've treated people, is what's been dividing our country. So we need to improve on that.
And I would say you're missing an opportunity. You're missing the point. And so I would encourage those individuals to listen more during this time, because I feel like that, like my dad said to the T, the conversations weren't happening enough before. And so the fact that we are able to have the conversation now, I would encourage those people to listen more during this time, because there's a huge opportunity here. And there's clearly a lot of history behind it.
And in the old school way, we didn't talk. we were told we weren't supposed to talk about these things, and so like my son said to me when I was talking to him, he was like, why didn't you talk to us? Why didn't you? I'm like, we weren't, we weren't supposed to, we were supposed to deal with it and move on, and now today, we're encouraging each other to talk about it and really deal with the problem head on. So it again, the generation gap is not, it's not the conversations. It's a lot of it has to do with the generation gaps as well. And I agree with encouraging conversation, even as hard as it may be. It's not the reason. It's the people. It's their mindset. It's what's embedded in them that's causing a division. When you don't open up your mind and allow new perceptions or new new information to enter your knowledge bank.
Paige, are you trying to jump back in? No. Okay. Yeah. What you all are sharing also, it makes me think of, right, longtime activist, right, Angela Davis, some of the most recent talks that she's been having of how she's encouraged by these young activists, right, are young people that they now have more self-care. They actually have more self-awareness, emotion. She didn't use this word emotional intelligence, but that from my psychological lens, that's how I would describe it. They have more emotional intelligence and more awareness around their own mental health to be able to kind of persist and endure and find a place to place all of the reactions that they're experiencing right through their activism work. So I agree. I'm also right. I'm encouraged by our youth because they have more in their toolkit, right, than folks of different generations. I'll even include myself. More in their toolkit than folks of different generations had, that will hopefully lead to longer term change or result in longer term change. Does anyone else want to respond to the existing question? Another question came in, and we're probably going to have to close out on our questions here soon because we are coming up on about 7:30. Any responses to this question about division? You're okay? Yeah. All right. So you. Sorry, reading. Okay. What can educators do to promote learning, healing, equity, and/or safety in classrooms? So, whether you're responding to this from an educator space or if you were in a classroom, right, what you would want to receive, and whether it's a work classroom or an academic classroom, what can educators do to promote learning, healing, equity, and safety in their classroom?
I think something that a lot of my professors have done, like you, I mean, the cool ones, they don't talk about it or bring it up in a way that it's highlighted. I mean, I feel like something that what would make kids more comfortable is to normalize stuff like that. Just, somehow incorporate little things here and there that eventually will, bring a bigger picture, but not, come into the classroom, we're going to have this conversation, just, incorporate it or slowly bring different things in. I think that makes it more just normal. It's not something that would make anyone uncomfortable. It's a normal conversation that everyone can talk about. So I really enjoy when professors do that. And I hope, after or moving forward, more professors do things like this, regardless of the class. But I feel like in most classes, you can somehow tie in race and whatnot. So yeah, I think just little things like that.
Thank you, Arionna. Anyone else?
I would just elaborate on that a little bit about, again, with my own experience. So educating yourself, you have to be aware of the diversity within your classroom and self-examine yourself of where those biases are at or exist, and make sure that you're being inclusive with your teaching, whether it's your lessons, whether it's visuals around the classroom, or it's individual conversations. If you see someone speaking out of turn, address it. Don't hide from it or be scared about it. Bring it to the light, and let's talk about it. As Arionna said, but making it normalizing it. We're not where we used to be. We're not back in 1969 where we can't talk. We can talk, and we should be able to talk about it sensibly and from a place of love again, and understanding that we can, have the healing so that learning can take place. Learning is going to be hindered if students feel like they're isolated in the classroom, if there's a minority and they're not represented, or teachers aren't, diverse across the whole, campus, or fields of interest and so forth. So I think as an educator, just really opening your eyes and making sure that you're not closing them.
I would even say in the classroom with kids, it's important to have the conversation too, or acknowledge it in some way. I know I have younger siblings that live with my parents, and they're 10 and 11, and they see what's going on in the world today, and they have questions, like, and the harder thing is, like, how do you explain it to them? I know when all the George Floyd stuff happened, and my little sisters saw the videos, they were like, why would they do that? And what is this? And are they going to do that to me? And why didn't the person help them? And it's a lot. It can be traumatizing, and that carries down to the classroom. Now they're looking at their color of their skin, and my sisters, they're full Black. And so they're looking at their skin and they're like, well, I'm his color, what can happen? And so it's important for the teachers to be aware of that. And so I would also, encourage that inclusive environment for sure, and teachers being aware of the children, especially here in Arizona, where the classroom isn't as diverse as other areas. I know where I'm from, Pennsylvania, and that I don't feel like that was a big issue in my classroom before, or my work environment, as much as it is here in Arizona anywhere. So I feel like definitely being inclusive in the conversation and with the children.
I just to add a little bit. I think, and I don't know, maybe it has, because it's been a long time since I've been in school, and I'm not sure what my girls are working on here all the time, but I think the curriculum has to probably change, and make sure that it portrays our history and tells our history, American history, Black and white together, in the right, in the right way. I mean, I remember being back in school, we learned very little about slavery, about Black people. So I think that would also help if we had, a history that was accurate, and that we were teaching our students, what really happened in America and how it happened.
I gotta tell you, we're good. We got a clap out of you. Go ahead.
Can I just add to that? It's when you're talking about that curriculum, Lee, it just rang a bell, because I just went through a Southwestern history class at Chandler-Gilbert, and everything, like he put it out there, like, think about the history that you heard, in elementary school, and this is the reality of what it was. And so everything that had been taught has been challenged, and it feels like, wow, what happened here? You know what I mean? Like, what happened here? Like, I always knew there were Indians and the Pilgrims, but common sense tells you if they traded with the Indians, that they had to be here first. So how Columbus, but just that whole history and the different things that professor enlightened me to, it changes things. It changes the scale widely as far as how we look at curriculum and history, and it needs to be revamped. What was rubber stamped back in 1980, whatever, is not for today. It's not.
Well, and so this is actually a really good conclusion, because even in your responses, you all have summarized and also brought together the focus, right, of this series, right? It's healing conversations. Initially, right, we offered it highlight, to amplify, right, the experiences of the Black community. But I hope, and I think our team hopes, that if the Black community is able to experience its own liberation and healing, that then that transcends, right, and that impacts the rest of us, right? Because when we can figure that part out, we're going to address, right, the Indigenous community. We're going to kind of have a blueprint, right, for how we address immigrant issues, right, all of the things that we're facing. And I'm going to amplify kind of what Leland was saying in your response to, before, when we weren't having these conversations, we were experiencing maybe more blatant acts of racism, right, and of discrimination. So if anything, I would say the fact that we are having these conversations, it is making us uncomfortable, but it is certainly resulting in progress, and we are pushing the needle ever slowly, right, to shifts and changes. And then the last thing, again, that you all said, and the willingness, so I want to appreciate all of you here on the panel for your willingness to kind of sit through what was uncomfortable conversations. Even our preparation had a lot of discomfort to it because we were afraid. We were afraid of how we were going to come off. We were afraid of, how am I going to appear? I don't want to say something to offend other people. But Arionna knows this, what I always share in classrooms. We did it. We did it, and the world didn't blow up, right? We did it, and we didn't fight one another. We did it. I'm going to echo, Beth, what you said. We did it holding the love that we have for one another, the positive intent that we have for one another, and we're willing to kind of be corrected and hear one another and then consider another perspective. That might not all change today, but it, might change in the coming days. Okay. Arionna, are you wanting to jump in?
I was going to say, the cycle has to break somewhere, right?
Say that again. I missed a part of it. What?
The cycle has to break somewhere. This is a start.
Thank you. Yes. So I want to encourage everyone to continue to share this video through your social media sites. Also recognize that there's a lot of other places we could be today, right? But we've chosen to be here together. So I really want to honor the time that's been given to us. And thank you so much, Leland, Beth, Paige, Arionna, Amy, for your vulnerability, for all the risks that you took with sharing this topic with us. I also want to say thank you to the team that brings this series forward. There are a host of people. I don't do this alone. I really appreciate everyone's commitment to this path, to these issues that we're trying to alleviate. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful evening.